Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today for a Business Tech Talk session. My name is Stephanie Memos, and I'm with the Marketing Department at CHIPS Technology Group here in New York. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and hear me clearly. If you can't, please let us know in the questions section. Otherwise, I'll assume we're good to go. I don't see anyone writing any comments that they cannot hear or see the screen, so it looks like we are good. So a little bit about who we are. Business Tech Talks is a webinar series sponsored by a group of nationally recognized managed services providers. All of our members provide comprehensive network management and support solutions in different regions across the United States. The goal of Business Tech Talks is to further educate business executives, decision makers, and IT professionals about key topics related to technology, as well as share our industry knowledge and best practices, promote business innovation, growth, and success. At any time during the webinar, feel free to submit your questions. We are having a Q&A after, so definitely looking forward to that. And without further ado, here is Alan Santana.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction and having me here today, Stephanie. Let's start by setting up the groundwork for this webinar. We're going to go through an introduction, talk about technology transition as to what is identity lifecycle management from 5 or 6 years ago to what it is today. We'll talk about what is lifecycle management, and we'll go through just a couple of real-world examples. They won't be any demos, but at least we'll give you kind of a static image as to how it looks. And we'll also talk about how would you plan for the future, and how would you implement one of these systems within your organization. Just some quick facts and figures to lay the groundwork. Part of the identity lifecycle management is that onboarding and offboarding is incredibly hard. This is due to the fact that the requirements of stakeholders from HR to management to having ownership and to be able to meet compliance when you're within your organization is incredibly hard to do when you're onboarding and offboarding either users or groups. And even at times bringing in suppliers and vendors. This is all part of a life cycle as you go throughout the year. You're adding users into groups, or you're adding users or employees into seasonally within your organization. You want to have maintain continuity over the course of the life cycle of that user. Part of this life cycle is being able to add the correct licensing for applications and services, being able to make sure that they have access to company assets and make sure they have the correct access to these assets. This could be map drives, VPN, security policies, and it'll be on-prem or off-prem. So infrastructure that's within your walls, and also infrastructure that's outside your walls. And giving them the correct information and maintaining continuity it's so extremely important as you go from user to user or group to group that it's important that we dot our I's and cross our T's when you're offboarding as well. There are many different systems that control identity management within an environment. This could be many of you small and medium-sized businesses have Active Directory. You might have an LDAP service that contains a list of directory users. You might even have a list of an Excel spreadsheet that contains a list of users, or phone numbers, or email addresses. And at times, you might even have an Excel spreadsheet that contains passwords, unfortunately. And this does happen and from organization to organization. And it could be within departments that you're not even sure of. And along with all that is having the correct licensing for software, the correct attributes related to services that are inside and outside your organization. Automated life cycles are for internal and external users, as I've already said. This includes your vendors, your suppliers, and your auditors. As they come in, you want to give them a finite amount of time to have access to your assets. Whether it's somebody who's coming in to fix an HVAC system, somebody who's going to be doing a database management upgrade or making changes to your systems, you only want to give them the correct access, but also do it for a finite amount of time, and not have to have that change control put in place and it be different every single time. You want to make it always the same, and that way there's an understanding as to who has access to something, when they have it, and what changes they made. This is your typical setup for a lot of our small to medium-sized businesses nowadays. You have your internal network, which is on the right-hand side. You have a firewall, you have Active Directory, which is doing a lot of your authentication internally. This is giving you local users access to network drives. It's getting access to do printing and things of that nature. Also gives you access to remote users who are outside that firewall. They'll have the same access regarding map drives and also being able to access applications that are internal, whether it's Microsoft applications or database applications. This is the typical setup that you'll see day in and day out. More expanded on this, you'll see that Active Directory is using LDAP to be able to reach outside of those walls and be able to hook up to Google Apps or one of your other service providers, whether it be an accounting software, being able to work with Office 365, and even attach yourself to certain website domains. All of these, in most states, when you walk into a small business or a medium-sized business, they're using one authentication area, and that's usually internalized. So what if you put an identity management system in place? The life cycle itself, if you were to place something that's continuous, that doesn't change for each request, you could save 30 minutes of time per request, because that provisioning request would be the same for that particular job function. So if you're asking if somebody's coming in and they're going to be for 3 months, it could be seasonal, they might only need a particular set of company accesses to company assets. This can be just redone over and over and over again by clicking in typically a name. You set up automatically provisions your email, network access, and any software that's inside or outside the organization. It also saves about 30 minutes when you're trying to determine the configuration groups and entitlements, because a lot of times you might have 30 people who are coming in, or even 5 people coming in, and you'll have different entitlements per person. Well, what you want to have, the ideal situation, is that you've already created these entitlements, you've created these groups, and they're all just one click away from typing in the name and entering a password, and it's all done for you automatically. And you typically save about 30 minutes in doing that. And the cost benefit of having these systems put in place is when you're doing auditing. Whether it's internal audits or external auditors coming in, you're saving a lot of time by having one directory that's able to look up all the information, look up all the entitlements, and look up who's provisioned for what, without having to ask 7 different department heads, hey, what do you have, who's working for you, we're not syncing up here. It's all about having everything synced up together. And it takes a long time to set up these rules for these individual apps and services with all these stakeholders. Now, what if an identity lifecycle management system is deployed within your organization? What would be the gains? And what gets business to deploy these systems? Let's start off with, real quickly, what are the flaws with the traditional lifecycle management systems? And these are that they're typically not designed without the cloud infrastructure in mind. They don't have simple integration of mobile client base. So you've got the user groups, you've got all the software and applications, but you also have a mobile device that it does not extend that security that you have on premise outside of those walls. And many created identities are outside the reach of Active Directory's one source of truth. And this basically states that if you only have Active Directory, which is basically Microsoft Windows servers, you're not, people don't have, or the departments within your organization don't have one source of truth where they're syncing up either individual users or attributes, groups, licensing, things of that nature. This is why older ILMs, which is again Identity Lifecycle Management systems, they don't encompass that syncing ability, having that universal directory. So, what is an Identity Lifecycle Management system? And I'm just going to read this as verbatim. Refers to a collection of technologies and business processes utilized in creating, managing, coordinating, and restricting the identification, access, and governance of identities for access to business tools and information. In the next slide over here, we have, it also encompasses the entire span of employees' need to access critical business data, apps, tools, in order to effectively perform their tasks, accomplish these business objectives. And it's not just about having the tools to be able to do a particular job function, but just to have it readily available, easily available, and having either HR and IT together to effectively hand out these policies. And to add on a layer of security is that you need to be able to log, monitor, and restrict access whenever necessary, and not wait 15 minutes, not wait an hour. If you need to remove access as quickly as possible, a lot of times current organizations, they might have to go through a 7, 8, 12 stage process where you're having to remove from 7 different systems and 4 or 5 different directories. And we're going to off-premise with these applications where you're having to deprovision. There's no automated way to deprovision these users. Now, your typical ILM system, you have a couple of things. You have a centralized control of people and groups. This is basically a universal directory. And this is for all the vendors that do provide these types of services. They have a central control of people. And here you can automate deprovisioning and also automate the offboarding process. And through this, it's done by that bidirectional user management of integrated bidirectional user management. So systems are talking to each other, and it's not just one way where a particular system is asking for either an addition. You're also asking for subtractions, adding attributes, removing licensing, adding licensing, and it can be provisioned for on-premise and also off-premise. So a lot of these vendors have cloud environments. They are cloud-based provisioning systems, but you can place an on-prem provisioning tool which allows you to make changes to Active Directory and make changes to on-premise applications and services that don't currently run in your cloud or a public cloud. And this takes us to deep integration with applications. It's not just adding a username, a password, or an address. It could be actual provisioning different parts of an application and licensing. And it can be done through other certain group policy, security policy, and things of that nature. But what's the process that makes the provisioning possible? How does the information requested get authorized? This leads us to single sign-on is the key. Single sign-on itself allows you to sign on to all these individual applications and services, typically from one panel. The basis of single sign-on is a protocol called Security Assertion Markup Language. And what this does is it's a standard that represents an XML-based framework for user authentication and authorization between two entities, and particularly service providers that host web applications and services and identity providers that provide and maintain digital user identities, such as Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, things of that nature. That was a promise that this technical is I'm going to get. So I want to show you guys a quick kind of flow chart as to how that works. For instance, let's say a user, we'll start it's accessing a Google application. You can take the place of Google here. You can put Facebook, you can put Twitter, whatever application and whatever the domain that you want to access, this is a pretty good flow chart for how it works. This visualization is basically between a service provider and identity provider. The user attempts to reach a Google-hosted service or application in this case. The service application partner generates a SAML authentication request, which is encoded and embedded into the URL for the partner's SSO service. Step 3, the application sends a redirect to the user's browser, which includes the encoded SAML authentication request submitted to the partner's SSO service. As you go down through step 4, the identity partner decodes the SAML request, authenticates the user, and generates a SAML assertion that contains the authenticated user identity and attributes. Now, I know I probably lost a lot of you guys already. I understand it, but this is as technical as we're going to get in this webinar. This is exciting stuff. It gets that simplicity that a lot of clients would like to have when they're onboarding and offboarding employees. The encoded SAML response is passed back to the browser, and then the browser sends the response to the access control server, and then the response is digitally signed with the partner's public and private RSA keys. Then the user's logged in Google hosted application. So as you're running through this process, it's authenticating, it's making sure that the person or groups of individuals are accessing what they should have access to. It finds out that this is the person that says it is, and it gives them access to that particular data set, and not everything, obviously. This is a request that's based on a user asking for authentication to an external site, as you already know. And internally, if you were to put this into an internal or internally in your organization, you use Active Directory or other LDAP protocol services to make this happen. How does identity lifecycle management augment your organization's security? I think it's important to note that to make something simple, you have to extend your internal security externally. It's not just about hopefully to make it easy for your HR department and make it a little bit easier for your IT department to be able to make changes in your organization. It's to not only maintain that security that you currently have, but to also extend it out to outside of the organization. Everybody has seen this before. I know you have. This is that dreaded Excel spreadsheet that you'll see at in some organizations that 1 or 2 people might keep. They might keep that website, the username and password. This is definitely not how you maintain security. But not having a process in place to have one place where you have passwords and where you can maintain an accurate count of licensing and an accurate count of where users are logging into. This is typically what you get. You might even see it on Post-it notes. You might see it on scribbled pieces of paper in books. And at times you might even see it having accidentally dropped on the floor. These things do happen, but having an identity management, lifecycle management system in place allows you to prevent for these things happening. One of the over the last several years, as many of you have seen, is the security breaches. And for the longest time, it was kept inside the silo of IT. But this security is it's a C-level issue. It should be your CIOs, your CTOs, and your COOs who should be make this the most important aspect of what they do besides providing a service for their clients. This allows you to keep all of your intellectual property in-house, allows you to understand who has access to what. And it's important that if your authentication isn't good enough, it will be taken and it will be changed. And 51% of web attacks originate with stolen credentials. on average, it takes 205 days before you realize that you've been breached. Having a life cycle for your organization, for how users are being brought in and how users are being offboarded, it's better. You have a better understanding as to if you have an issue through logs, through being able to look through reporting, if there has been a possible breach. Some of these vendors provide a type of AI within their services that provide this type of security coverage. And typically, an ILM will include multi-factor authentication. So you're looking at not only installing a lifecycle for all these users, but having password protection, having multi-factor authentication is definitely needed. You'll have the ability to either use an application. You'll have maybe a texting to be able to give you a code. You can even have email. So you can have many different policies that are put in place. And these policies don't always have to be the same. You can kind of round robin through these policies, and some of these vendors allow you to do this, so where you're not always looking for a particular a second layer of authentication from one, either an app, email, or a text message that comes to your mobile device. It extends your existing security infrastructure. So if you're already, as we talked about before, if you already have a very good internal security infrastructure, these group policies have been vetted out, then this will allow you to extend it outside the organization. And ILM allows you to do so. Allows you to have also mobile device management. These are typically these extra pieces that you can add on into your life cycle for your users and employees. It's a piece that is highly recommended because a lot of users work out from their mobile devices. You want to have that exact same security that you have internally, also externally, whether it's having a sandboxed application that holds your email and all your bespoke applications. Having mobile device management is incredibly important. And above all else, having IT and HR integrate their systems is a key component to making an ILM work very well. As you're bringing on talent into your organization, you need to be able to have, again, the onboarding and offboarding solid, and you need to have it to where you can report against it and to where you can easily make changes to it if need be without having to affect a lot of the existing user base. So I've been talking about these systems, and I want to give you everybody here kind of a look and feel. We're not doing a demo, but I have there's a couple of vendors that I've taken some pages from, and it's very simplistic on the front end. It's made so because that's how you want your employees to work. You want them to understand what they have access to. You also want them to be able to just click on a button and say, hey, I need access to this particular piece of software or service. So if we look at this first one here, this is from Okta. They have a panel here that has you have Gmail, you have being able to go onto different websites and Office 365, Salesforce, things of that nature. So you can customize what you see here with what you need within your organization. And each of these icons can represent either an internal or an external resource. And not everybody's going to have 20 different icons. There are times where you only will need, a user will only need 3. Are they going to be working in marketing? Are they going to be a system administrator? Or are they going to be working in accounting? So you'd only give them what they need. And it's very bespoke that deep integration with applications allow you to go straight to the service, the application or the web app, and it logs them in automatically, and it gives them the appropriate access for what they do to either their job function or to limit their access however an organization sees fit. This is a typical Okta system log page. Basically, it's what someone who's administering these services would see. And you get this from Okta, you get this from OneLogin, you get this from Microsoft's Identity Management Service. So these are all kind of like the basics that you would get. They all offer different levels of integration. For instance, this right here is OneLogin. They have it's a lot of the same look and feel, and you get a lot of those same integrations and a lot of the same multi-factor security. So they just don't log in, put in a password and username, log in and say, hey, I have access to what I need. You would incorporate this with multi-factor authentication. You might even incorporate this into your mobile device management. These are great tools to simplify and make a little bit less friction for each employee as it goes throughout their day. This is basically a Microsoft's version of it. This is the system administrative portion of it. As you're setting up new users, a lot of vendors do offer these types of services, and they have some do a better job of doing certain things, while some others might have other options that aren't present in other vendors. So, preparing for the future. How do you take your organization and say, I want to be able to put a system in place that allows me to make it a little bit easier to onboard and offboard my users, and also be able to put in, extend your security that's inside your organization and take it outside. I think that to be able to have something put in its place like this, it's not rocket science in any shape or form. It's very simple. You can do it in very small pieces. You can set up single sign-on for applications, and you can set up multi-factor authentication. There are applications that might not have a simple integration, but these vendors have, over time, the last several years, have gotten very good at putting these integrations as part of a package, and it might not even require either a bespoke or customized type of integration to make this work. It's very transforming for your organization to put a lifecycle management tool in place. It makes it to where you aren't spending so much time and having conversations as to what this person should have, or when they should have it, or what exactly, or for how long they should have it. It eliminates those conversations, and it moves you over to, what else can I give this person to promote their job function? What can I give this vendor and supplier? How much access can I give them to be able to perform their job function as well much faster? And it really does transform the employee experience. Being able to know exactly where all your information is located, one single panel of glass. It makes it so much easier to access that information. And in the onboarding process, when you're creating a handbook, you're literally making it so much easier to be able to take in, to be able to add in security, and to make sure that you are able to log the changes and be able to make things easier for auditors. And it saves time, and it lowers your cost to do business.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan. We had a few questions come in during the presentation, so let's go forth and address those. So question number 1 reads, what is the time it typically takes to implement an ILM?
It really depends on the size of your organization, and also how complex you want to get it to. It can be done over, let's say you have 100 users. If you just want to add single sign-on, or you want to add on multi-factor authentication, it can be done over a weekend. But it depends on the complexity of the applications, depends on the size of your organization. And as you ask for more security, as you ask for more assets outside of the organization, the longer it takes.
Okay, great. Question number 2 reads, we currently have a very good security policy in place and policies and sound processes for onboarding and offboarding workers. Why automate if headcount will not grow in the near future?
I think that it's a really good question. It's to automate it, you're still saving time, and it doesn't have to be a full end-to-end solution. It's adding another layer of security. It's understanding that there are several different directories, whether they're applications, whether it's Active Directory, whether it's a phone list, whether it's HR. You want to be able to sync up all of these directories and have something universal. And again, that's something that it makes it easier for further implementations, or maybe you might not know that there is future growth within your business, and it makes it easier to have that kind of foundation.
Okay, great. Question number 3 reads, what's the cost structure to implement an ILM?
Typically, cost structure, it depends on the amount of users that you have. It's usually per month, but usually to OpEx type cost. You might have, in many cases, you might have a fee up front to set up the process, but it's based on user count. So you might have a couple of dollars per piece, of whether it's multi-factor authentication, whether it's single sign-on, whether it's having a universal directory. It's all based on a la carte. It's what you need and what you need between now and the next year.
Okay, great. Looks like we have one last question. What's the best way to get started with an ILM system?
I think the best way is to ask your managed service provider. It's a lot of work to go out there and look up this information, but your managed service provider is able to already understands what you have available to you. It understands that you might already have some unsynced information, and is able to tell you easily as to whether or not these applications and services can be synced up in an ILM in a short order. Okay,
great. So it looks like that is all the questions that came in for this webinar. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today and learning more about Identity Lifecycle Management. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out. But this concludes our webinar for today. So please be sure to keep an eye out for the next Business Tech Talks webinar, and we will see you soon. Thanks so much.